Some gods promise power, others demand proof. Moloch demanded the unthinkable. Moloch was not worshipped like other gods. His rituals were shrouded in a chilling solemnity, stripped of all comfort and joy. There were no hymns sung in his name. There were no prayers whispered seeking his solace. There was no mercy to be found in his presence. There was only fire and a profound, echoing silence. This wasn't the kind of deity you turned to for everyday blessings. Moloch was a god of last resort, a figure of ultimate desperation, whose name was spoken only when all other hopes had been extinguished. His presence was not felt in grand temples filled with light and song, but in the stark, flickering glow of a singular, terrifying flame. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was heavy with unspoken fear and the weight of what was to come. It was a silence that consumed everything, a void where only the crackling of fire dared to break the stillness, promising not warmth, but an end. Ancient texts, fragmented and haunting, paint a disturbing picture of the idol at the center of these rites. They speak of a colossal statue, hollowed out from within, forged entirely of bronze. This was no work of art meant for admiration. It was an instrument. Before the ritual began, a fire would be lit inside the statue's core, its intense heat slowly turning the metal from a dull brown to a malevolent, glowing red. The figure's arms were extended, outstretched as if in offering. But this was not a gesture of embrace or welcome. They were open to receive. The hollow design, the glowing metal, the open arms, every detail was engineered for a single, terrible purpose. It stood not as a symbol of a protector, but as a gateway, a furnace in the shape of a god, waiting patiently in the darkness for its offering. The very sight of it, glowing ominously against the night sky, would have been enough to instill a deep, primal fear. To the modern mind, this act seems like a brutal execution, a senseless act of cruelty. But to the people who performed it, this was something else entirely. It was a transformation. In their belief system, fire was not just an element of destruction. It was a sacred portal, a divine conduit. They believed that the flames had the power to carry an offering from the physical realm across the veil that separates our world from the next. The fire would transport the sacrifice beyond the reach of mortals, straight into the presence of immense, unimaginable power. This is a key distinction. Moloch did not listen to prayers or accept promises whispered on the wind. He did not care for words or pleas. He demanded something tangible, something irreversible. Moloch only accepted passage. The fire was the vehicle, the offering was the passenger, and the destination was the court of a god who only dealt in the currency of ultimate sacrifice. So we must ask the question that historians and archaeologists still struggle with today. Why? Why would any society, any group of people, resort to such a horrifying practice? The answer lies in desperation. Before Moloch, there were other gods, like Baal, the god of storms and fertility. People prayed to Baal for rain, for bountiful harvests, for victory in battle. And for a time, Baal answered. The rains came, the crops grew, and their enemies were defeated. But what happens when the answers stop? What do you do when the sky remains clear and the fields turn to dust? When enemy armies gather at your gates and the gods of your fathers fall silent? When desperation reaches its absolute peak? When you are backed into a corner with nothing left to lose? That is when the old rules no longer apply. That is when the final fire was invoked. It was an act born not of casual cruelty, but of the deepest, most profound human fear, the fear of utter annihilation. Imagine the scene. It's night. The bronze idol glows, casting long, dancing shadows, and through the darkness, a sound begins to build, a relentless, rhythmic pounding. Drums. But these were not the drums of celebration or ceremony. Their purpose was far more practical and far more sinister. They were played to cover the sounds, to drown out the noise of the ritual itself. The constant, thundering beat was a shield, a wall of sound designed to protect the community not from an external enemy, but from itself. The drums were there to smother the sound of doubt creeping into the hearts of the onlookers. They were there to overwhelm the sound of regret. The relentless rhythm was meant to create a trance-like state, to suspend thought and emotion, to ensure that the ritual, once started, would be seen through to its terrible conclusion without faltering. The drumming wasn't music, it was a tool of psychological control. Here we arrive at the darkest secret of Moloch's worship. He was not a god of chaos, reveling in random destruction. He was a god of absolute, unquestioning obedience. The nature of the offering was the entire point. It had to be something precious. It had to be the thing you loved most in the world. The sacrifice had to hurt. It had to tear a hole in the fabric of your life, to leave a wound that would never fully heal. Because in the cold logic of this belief system, a sacrifice without pain had no value. An easy offering meant nothing. Only by giving up what was most dear could you prove the depths of your devotion and the sincerity of your plea. This was the final test of faith. It wasn't about appeasing a hungry God. It was about demonstrating that your obedience to him was greater than your own humanity, greater than your own heart. Today, we look back on this with horror. We no longer use fire and bronze statues. We believe we are more civilized, more enlightened. But look closely at our world. We still believe, in our own ways, that extreme sacrifice brings extreme reward. We sacrifice our time, our health, our relationships, our peace of mind, all laid upon the altars of career, ambition, wealth, and recognition. We still burn ourselves out in the pursuit of something more, something we believe will finally bring us security or power. We tell ourselves the price is worth it, that the pain is temporary. It's a different altar, a different kind of fire, but it's the same fundamental belief, the conviction that to gain something of great value, you must first lose something of great value. Moloch was not summoned often. He was a weapon of last resort, a desperate gamble made only when everything else had failed and the world was ending. He was the answer you sought when you were out of options. And in the next episode, we are going to the one place in the ancient world where the fires of Moloch, it is said, never stopped burning. We are going to the city that became synonymous with his name. We are going to Carthage. Subscribe, because the ashes are real.